The acrid scent of burning sage saturated the air, thick and suffocating. I stood trembling at the edge of the sacred circle, my plain white dress fluttering in the biting autumn breeze. 20 pairs of eyes bored into my skin, heavy with a mixture of judgment and cold curiosity. In our pack, the fertility ritual was an ancient, hallowed tradition, a ceremony where omegas were blessed with the moon goddess's favor before the mating season began. But for me, it was a recurring nightmare, a cruel reminder of the one thing I was denied. "Eleanor," Elder Mira called. Her voice was as dry and brittle as the dead leaves crunching beneath our feet. "Step forward." My heart thrashed against my ribs like a trapped bird as I moved into the center of the stone circle. Around the perimeter, the elders stood like statues, their faces etched with everything from pity to sharp disdain. Behind them, the rest of the pack leaned in, hungry for the spectacle, though many had already begun to whisper and look away. After all, why waste their breath on a barren omega? I clutched the small silver pendant at my throat, my mother's final gift. It was a waxing moon, a symbol of growth and potential even when the world is swallowed by shadow. "Remember, my light," she had whispered with her final breath, "the moon always returns." For years, I had clung to that promise, praying for the day it would finally come true for me. Elder Mira raised her weathered hands, and the clearing plunged into a deafening silence. She approached me, carrying a small clay bowl filled with sacred red ochre, the blood-colored pigment used to mark the chosen. Normally, this was the moment an omega received the blessing, a sacred mark painted across the brow to signal they were ready for a mate. "Eleanor Stone," she announced, her voice echoing through the trees. "We gather today, as our ancestors did, to bestow the blessing of fertility upon our omegas." I kept my eyes anchored to the dirt, counting the pebbles beneath my bare feet to keep from shattering under the weight of the pack's collective stare. For 3 years, I had stood in this exact spot. For 3 years, I had walked away with a clean forehead and a broken heart, receiving only pitying glances instead of the goddess's mark. However, Elder Mira continued, her tone dropping to a low, chilling register that made my skin prickle with dread. "The moon goddess only blesses those she deems worthy." A dark murmur rippled through the crowd like a coming storm. I could feel my cheeks burning with humiliation, but I forced myself to lift my chin. I would not show them weakness. Not again. "Eleanor has been determined barren by our healers," Elder Mira announced, though everyone already knew. The whispers had followed me through the packlands for years. The curse she bears was confirmed when she came of age, and no amount of ritual or prayer can undo what the goddess has decided. My fingers tightened around my pendant. Curse, the word they always used, as though my condition was punishment for some ancient sin. As though I had chosen this fate. Elder Mira stepped away, leaving me standing alone in the center of the circle. "You may return to your place," she said, not unkindly, but with finality that cut deeper than cruelty. As I stepped back, I caught a flash of movement at the edge of the clearing. My breath caught in my throat as I recognized the broad shoulders and imposing silhouette of King Raphael Blackstone, Alpha of all Alphas, ruler of the 7 territories. He stood partially concealed by the shadow of an ancient oak, his presence unexpected and alarming. What was he doing here? The Alpha King never attended pack rituals. Especially not those of a minor pack like ours. His eyes, amber and penetrating even from a distance, locked onto mine for a fleeting moment. Something passed between us, a current of awareness that made the hairs on my arms rise. Then he turned away, disappearing into the forest as silently as he'd appeared. I barely registered the remainder of the ceremony, my mind spinning with questions. By the time the ritual concluded, dusk had fallen, casting long shadows across the forest floor. The pack members dispersed, returning to their homes for the celebratory feast that would follow. A feast where omegas who had received the blessing would be presented to potential mates. I wouldn't be attending. I never did. "Eleanor." I turned to find Lisa, my only friend, approaching with a sympathetic smile. Her forehead bore the fresh red mark of the blessing, vivid against her dark skin. "Don't say you're sorry," I said before she could speak. "I can't bear to hear it again." She nodded, understanding in her eyes. I wasn't going to. I was actually going to suggest we skip the feast and go to the hot springs instead. It's a perfect night for stargazing. I managed a small smile, grateful for her companionship. "That sounds wonderful." We walked in comfortable silence through the forest, following the narrow path that led away from the pack grounds. Night had fully descended now, the moon rising full and bright above the treetops. Its silvery light filtered through the canopy, casting dapple patterns on the forest floor. "Did you see him?" Lisa asked suddenly, her voice hushed with awe. The Alpha King. He was watching the ceremony. I saw, I replied, trying to sound casual despite the strange flutter in my chest at the memory of those amber eyes. Though I can't imagine why he'd be interested in our little pack's fertility ritual. Rumor has it he's looking for a mate, Lisa said, wiggling her eyebrows suggestively. After his queen died last winter, the council has been pressing him to remarry to secure the bloodline. Well, he certainly won't find what he's looking for with me, I said, the words tasting bitter on my tongue. Lisa fell silent, and I immediately regretted my sharp tone. I'm sorry, I said. It's just days like today are difficult. I know, she replied softly. But Ella, being barren doesn't define you. There's more to life than bearing children. If only our pack believed that. In our society, an Omega's primary purpose was reproduction. Without that ability, I was considered less than worthless, a drain on resources, taking up space that could be occupied by a fertile Omega. It was only because of my skills as a healer that I was tolerated at all. We reached the hot springs just as the moon climbed higher in the night sky. Steam rose from the surface of the water, creating an ethereal mist that swirled and danced in the cool night air. The springs were deserted, everyone else attending the feast. I slipped out of my white dress and eased into the warm water, feeling some of the tension leave my body as the heat enveloped me. Lisa joined me a moment later, sighing contentedly as she submerged herself up to her shoulders. Sometimes I think I could stay here forever, she mused, tilting her head back to look at the stars scattered across the inky black sky. I closed my eyes, letting the mineral-rich water work its soothing magic on my tired muscles. If only we could. We soaked in comfortable silence for a while. The only sounds the gentle lapping of the water and the distant hooting of an owl. But as the minutes stretched on, I became aware of a prickling sensation at the base of my spine. The feeling of being watched. I opened my eyes and scanned the surrounding trees, but saw nothing except shadows and moonlight. Still, the sensation persisted, raising goosebumps along my arms despite the warmth of the water. Do you feel that? I whispered to Lisa. She frowned, sitting up straighter. Feel what? Before I could answer, a twig snapped somewhere in the darkness beyond the springs. Lisa and I both froze, our heightened senses straining to detect any further movement. Probably just a deer, Lisa said. But her voice lacked conviction. I wasn't convinced either. The forest had gone eerily silent. No owl calls, no rustling leaves, as though all the creatures within it were holding their breath. My heart rate accelerated as I eased closer to the edge of the pool, ready to flee if necessary. Then he stepped into the clearing, and my heart nearly stopped. The Alpha King stood at the edge of the springs, his powerful frame silhouetted against the moonlight. He wore only loose black pants, his chest bare and sculpted like marble. His dark hair fell in waves to his shoulders. And his amber eyes gleamed like a predator's in the dark. Your Majesty, Lisa gasped, immediately, lowering her gaze in deference as she sank deeper into the water to cover herself. I should have done the same, shown proper respect, averted my eyes, made myself small and submissive, as Omegas were expected to do in the presence of an Alpha, especially one of his stature. Instead, I found myself staring directly at him, transfixed. He moved closer, his gaze never leaving my face. Leave us, he commanded. Lisa, his deep voice resonating through the clearing. Lisa shot me a panicked look, torn between obedience to her king and loyalty to her friend. It's okay, I assured her. Though my mouth had gone dry with fear and something else, something I couldn't quite name. I'll be fine. After a moment's hesitation, Lisa climbed out of the water, hastily wrapped herself in her cloak, and disappeared down the path toward the pack grounds, throwing one last worried glance over her shoulder. Once we were alone. The Alpha King approached the edge of the springs, his movements fluid and predatory. I remained where I was, the warm water lapping at my collarbone, providing minimal coverage. My heart hammered so loudly I was certain he could hear it. You're the Barren Omega, he said, his words a statement rather than a question. I flinched at the blunt description, but forced myself to meet his gaze. I have a name, I replied, surprising myself with my boldness. It's Eleanor. A flicker of something, surprise perhaps, or amusement passed across his face. Alphas weren't accustomed to being challenged, especially not by Omegas. Eleanor, he repeated, as though testing the feel of my name on his tongue. Do you know who I am? Everyone knows who you are, Your Majesty. You're King Raphael Blackstone, Alpha of all Alphas, ruler of the 7 territories. He smiled then, a slow predatory curl of his lips that sent a shiver down my spine. And yet you speak to me as though we are equals. Forgive me if I've offended you, I said, though I wasn't sorry at all. I've never been very good at pretending to be less than I am. Instead of anger, his smile widened, revealing a flash of white teeth. No, I don't imagine you are. He crouched down at the edge of the water, bringing his face level with mine. This close, I could see the flecks of gold in his amber eyes. Could smell his scent, earth and pine, and something wild that made my omega instincts stir despite myself. That's what interests me about you, Ella Laner. You were rejected today, humiliated before your entire pack, and yet you hold your head high. You don't cower. You don't plead for acceptance. I swallowed hard, unsure how to respond. What choice do I have? To break down every time I'm reminded of what I lack would be to live in constant despair. His gaze intensified, searching my face as though looking for something specific. And what is it you believe you lack, little Omega? The question caught me off guard. I cannot bear children. I'm cursed. Cursed? He repeated thoughtfully. And who told you this? Your elders, your healers. He reached out suddenly, his fingers brushing against the silver pendant at my throat. The brief contact sent electricity coursing through my veins. Or perhaps someone who knew better than any healer what truly lies within you. His touch lingered for a moment too long, and I found myself unable to answer, my mind clouded by his proximity and the intensity of his gaze. When he finally withdrew his hand, I felt the loss of contact like a physical ache. You should return to your pack, King Raphael said abruptly, rising to his full height. These woods aren't safe after dark, especially for an Omega alone. The sudden dismissal stung more than it should have. I've walked these forests since childhood, I replied, gathering my courage. And I'm hardly defenseless. A low, rumbling chuckle escaped him. No, I don't imagine you are. He turned to leave, then paused, glancing back over his shoulder. Well, speak again, Eleanor. It wasn't a request, but a declaration. Before I could respond, he melted into the shadows, leaving me alone with the sound of my thundering heart and 1,000 unanswered questions. I remained in the springs until my fingers wrinkled and the water began to cool, trying to make sense of the encounter. Why would the Alpha King seek me out? Why would he care about a barren Omega from a minor pack? His words echoed in my mind, or perhaps someone who knew better than any healer what truly lies within you. What did he know that I didn't? By the time I returned to the pack grounds, the feast was still in full swing. Laughter and music spilled from the great hall. A stark contrast to the turmoil inside me. I slipped quietly past, heading for the small cottage at the edge of the settlement that served as both my home and my healing room. Inside, the familiar scent of dried herbs and tinctures welcomed me. I lit a single candle and sank onto my narrow bed, exhaustion washing over me. But sleep remained elusive. My mind replaying the Alpha King's words and the strange intensity in his amber eyes. Dawn found me still awake, preparing medicines for the day ahead. I had just finished grinding willow bark for a pain remedy when a sharp knock at my door startled me. I opened it to find Lisa, her face pale with worry. Eleanor, you need to come quickly. It's Elder Mira. She collapsed during the night. I grabbed my healer's bag without hesitation and followed Lisa through the village to the Eller's cottage. Inside, I found Elder Mira lying on her bed. Her breathing shallow, her normally ruddy complexion ashen. What happened? I asked, kneeling beside her and placing a hand on her forehead. She was burning with fever. She seemed fine at the feast, said another elder who stood anxiously in the corner. But she woke in the night, delirious with fever. She's been asking for you, I frowned. Elder Mira had never particularly liked me. Had in fact been one of the most vocal about my cursed state. Why would she ask for me specifically? The Eller's eyes fluttered open as I examined her, recognition flickering across her face. Eleanor, she rasped, her voice barely audible. You came? Of course I came, I replied, already measuring out herbs for a fever-reducing tea. I'm the healer. Her hand shot out with surprising strength, gripping my wrist. Not just a healer, she whispered, her eyes suddenly clear and piercing. You never were just that. A chill ran down my spine. What do you mean? But her moment of lucidity passed as quickly as it had come. Her eyes rolled back, and she began to convulse. Everyone out, I commanded, my healer's instincts taking over. I need space to work. The next hours passed in a blur as I fought to bring Elder Mirror's fever down. I used every remedy in my arsenal. Willow bark tea, cold compresses, fever root pick uses. By midday, the crisis had passed, and she slept peacefully, her breathing regular once more. I sat back on my heels, exhausted, but relieved. The cottage had emptied gradually as the immediate danger passed, leaving me alone with my sleeping patient and my troubled thoughts. Elder Mira's words nagged at me. Not just a healer. You never were just that. What had she meant? You have a gift. I whirled around to find King Raphael standing in the doorway, his powerful frame nearly filling the small space. How had he approached so silently? And how long had he been watching me? Your Majesty, I acknowledged, too tired to be properly surprised by his appearance. If you've come to see Elder Mira, I'm afraid she's sleeping and shouldn't be disturbed. I didn't come to see her, his amber eyes fixed on me with that same unnerving intensity from the night before. I came to see you. I rose to my feet, suddenly conscious of my disheveled appearance, my light hair falling loose from its braid, my simple dress stained with herbal remedies. Me? Why? Instead of answering, he stepped fully into the cottage and closed the door behind him. The small space seemed to shrink further with his presence, his scent, that intoxicating blend of earth and pine and wild power filling my senses. You saved her life, he said, nodding toward Elder Mira. When others would have failed, I shook my head, uncomfortable with the praise. I only did what any healer would do. No, his voice was firm. What you did requires more than knowledge. It requires intuition, power, the ability to sense what others cannot. Something in his tone made me wary. Why are you really here, Your Majesty? Our pack has little to offer the Alpha King. A smile curved his lips, though it didn't reach his eyes. Direct as always. Little Omega. He moved closer, forcing me to tilt my head back to maintain eye contact. I've been watching you for some time, Eleanor Stone. Long before yesterday's ritual. The revelation sent a jolt through me. Watching me? Why? Because you're special, he said simply. Because you're not what they believe you to be. My heart stuttered in my chest. And what do they believe me to be? Cursed. Barren. His hand reached out, fingers brushing against my cheek so lightly I might have imagined it. But I know better. I stepped back, unsettled by his touch and the certainty in his voice. What do you want from me? For a long moment, he simply studied me, his expression unreadable. Then he reached into his pocket and withdrew a small object, holding it out to me on his palm. It was a seed, small, black, and unremarkable, save for the faint silvery sheen that seemed to ripple across its surface in the dim light. Plant this tonight, he said, his voice dropping to a near whisper. Under the waning moon. Water it with 3 drops of your blood. Then wait. I stared at the seed, a mixture of fascination and apprehension washing over me. What will grow? The truth, he replied enigmatically. Plant it, Eleanor. If you wish to understand what you truly are. Before I could question him further, a groan from Elder Mira drew my attention. When I turned back, King Raphael was gone, leaving only the seed behind on the small table by the door. I slipped it into my pocket just as Elder Mira's eyes fluttered open. She looked disoriented, her gaze roaming the cottage before settling on me. Eleanor, she murmured weakly. What happened? You had a fever, I explained, helping her sip water from a clay cup. A dangerous one, but it's broken now. You need to rest. She frowned, struggling to remember. I had strange dreams. The Alpha King was here. Just dreams. I assured her, though my hand unconsciously moved to touch the sea in my pocket. The fever can cause vivid visions. She shook her head slightly. No, not just now. He was at the ritual yesterday, watching you. Her eyes, still glassy with the remnants of fever, fixed on me with disturbing clarity. He knows, doesn't he, about the prophecy? A chill ran down my spine. What prophecy, Elder Mira? But exhaustion claimed her once more, her eyes drifting closed as she slipped back into sleep. I sat beside her for a long time, my mind racing with questions that had no answers. By nightfall, Elder Mira's condition had improved enough that another pack member could watch over her. I returned to my cottage, bony weary but too restless to sleep. The seed in my pocket seemed to burn against my skin, demanding attention. I removed it and placed it on my small wooden table, staring at it in the candlelight, planted under the waning moon, water it with my blood. It sounded like something from the old tales, magical and dangerous. What would grow from such a planting? And why did the Alpha King believe it would reveal my true nature? The sensible thing would be to destroy it, throw it into the fire, and forget this strange encounter. But curiosity burned within me, stronger than caution. As the night deepened, I made my decision. I took a small clay pot, filled it with rich soil from my herb garden, and carefully placed the seed in the center. Then I pricked my finger with a thorn, and allowed 3 drops of blood to fall onto the dark earth. "Grow," I whispered, though I felt foolish talking to a seed. "Show me what I need to know." I placed the pot on my windowsill, where the waning moon's light fell directly upon it, and went to bed, expecting nothing. I dreamed that night of a vast forest unlike any I'd seen before. The trees towered impossibly high, their trunks wider than houses, their foliage creating a cathedral-like canopy above. I walked barefoot through dappled sunlight, following a path that seemed to form beneath my feet with each step. In the center of the forest stood a massive tree, its bark silver white and gleaming. As I approached, I noticed a small door set into its trunk, just tall enough for me to enter without stooping. A voice whispered from within, familiar yet strange. "Come inside, daughter of the moon. It's time you remembered who you are." I reached for the door and woke with a gasp, my heart pounding. Sunlight streamed through my window, falling across my bed. I sat up, disoriented, the dream still vivid in my mind. Then I remembered the seed. I scrambled out of bed and rushed to the windowsill. The pot sat exactly where I'd left it, the soil undisturbed. But from its center rose a tiny silver shoot, no taller than my little finger, with 2 perfect leaves unfurling toward the light. Impossible. No seed could germinate and sprout overnight. I touched one of the delicate leaves gently, and a jolt of energy surged through me so powerful it nearly knocked me backward. Images flashed through my mind. A silver forest, a full moon, wolves running beneath its light, and a woman with my face but adorned with a crown of starlight. A knock at my door broke the vision. I withdrew my hand from the plant, shaken and confused. Lisa stood outside, her expression troubled. "Ella Laner, the council has called for you." "The council?" I frowned. The Pack Council rarely interacted with me directly. "Why?" "They wouldn't say." Lisa bit her lip nervously, "but Elder Mira is with them. And the Alpha King's guards have arrived in the village." My blood ran cold. "His guards? Is he with them?" "No, but they're asking questions about you." Her voice dropped to a whisper. "Eleanor, what's going on? Why would the Alpha King's personal guard be interested in you?" I shook my head, genuinely bewildered despite my strange encounters with King Raphael. "I don't know." But as I followed Lisa toward the council hall, I couldn't help glancing back at my cottage where the impossible silver seedling reached toward the sun, and I wondered if I just made a terrible mistake. The council hall stood at the center of our settlement, its stone walls weathered by countless seasons. As Lisa and I approached, I noticed the unusual number of pack members gathered outside. Their expressions a mixture of curiosity and concern. At the entrance stood 2 men I didn't recognize, their posture rigid and alert, their black uniforms bearing the silver wolf insignia of the Alpha King's personal guard. They assessed me coolly as I approached, their gazes lingering on my light hair before they stepped aside to let me pass. The weight of their scrutiny followed me into the hall, where the council members sat in a semicircle, their faces grave. Elder Mira was among them, looking remarkably recovered despite her ordeal, her sharp eyes tracking my movements. In the center of the room stood a man whose bearing marked him as someone of importance. Tall and broad-shouldered with silver streaking his dark hair and a scar running from temple to jaw. He wore the same uniform as the guards outside but with additional insignia that suggested higher rank. "Eleanor Stone," he announced as I entered, his voice echoing in the cavernous space. "I am Commander Thorne, head of the Alpha King's Royal Guard." I inclined my head slightly, aware of the tension filling the room. "Commander, I'm told you've been asking questions about me." A murmur rippled through the council at my directness. Elder Mira's lips thinned in disapproval, but Commander Thorne's expression remained impassive. "Indeed," he confirmed. "By order of King Raphael, you are to come with me to the capital immediately." The hall erupted in shocked whispers. I stood frozen, unable to process what I'd just heard. "On what grounds?" Elder Brennan, the head of our council, demanded, rising to his feet. Ella Laner is a member of our pack. If she has committed some offense against the crown. She has committed no offense, Commander Thorne interrupted. His Majesty's interest in her is of a personal nature. The implication hung in the air, causing the whispers to intensify. I felt heat rise to my cheeks, both from embarrassment and indignation. Personal nature, I repeated, finding my voice at last. I don't understand. Commander Thorne's gaze settled on me, assessing. It is not my place to elaborate on His Majesty's intentions. You will learn more when you arrive at the palace. And if I refuse, the words escaped before I could stop them. A tense silence fell over the hall. Refusing a direct request from the Alpha King was unheard of, tantamount to treason in some territories. Commander Thorne's expression hardened slightly. That would be unwise. Elder Mira rose then, her movement slow but deliberate. A word in private, Commander? She gestured toward a small antechamber off the main hall. After a moment's consideration, he nodded, following her from the room. The instant they were gone, the council members erupted in heated discussion. What have you done to draw the Alpha King's attention? Elder Brennan demanded, fixing me with a suspicious glare. Nothing, I insisted. Though the seed in my cottage and my strange encounters with King Raphael suggested otherwise. I've barely spoken to him. But you have spoken to him, another council member interjected. When? Where? Before I could respond, the antechamber door opened. Elder Mira emerged first, her expression unreadable, followed by Commander Thorne, who appeared slightly paler than before. The council will permit Eleanor to accompany you to the capital, Elder Mira announced, her voice carrying a finality that silenced all objections. She will depart immediately. I stared at her in disbelief. Don't I have a say in this? Her eyes met mine, and for the first time, I saw something there besides disdain. A flicker of what might have been fear or perhaps regret. No, child. You don't. Not in this. Commander Thorne stepped forward. You will be permitted 1 hour to gather your belongings. A carriage awaits. My mind raced, searching for a way out of this impossible situation. But as I looked around the hall, I realized with crushing clarity that no one would stand with me against a royal command. Not even Lisa, whose eyes were downcast, her expression defeated. 1 hour, I agreed, my voice hollow. I left the hall in a daze, barely registering the curious stares of the pack members gathered outside. Lisa fell into step beside me, her presence a small comfort. I'll help you pack, she offered quietly once we were out of earshot. I nodded, grateful for her loyalty, even as fear noted at my insides. Lisa, what is happening? Why would the Alpha King send his guards for me? She shook her head, bewilderment clear in her eyes. I don't know. But Ella Laner, this could be an opportunity. Life in the capital is different. Omegas there have more freedom, more respect. Or it could be a disaster, I countered, thinking of the strange seed now growing in my cottage. What if he knows something about me, something dangerous? We reached my small dwelling, and I pushed open the door with trepidation. The silver seedling on my windowsill had grown noticeably in the short time I'd been gone. Its stem now as thick as my thumb. Its leaves broader and more numerous. Lisa gasped when she saw it. What is that? I've never seen a plant like it before. A gift, I said hesitantly. From the Alpha King. Her eyes widened. Ella Laner, you can't leave this behind. If it's from him, it must be important. She was right, of course. Whatever this plant was, whatever it might reveal, I couldn't abandon it now. I carefully transplanted it into a smaller pot that would be easier to transport. Then began gathering the few possessions I couldn't bear to leave behind. My mother's pendant, my healer's journal, a small collection of rare herbs. As I packed, I became aware of a strange sensation deep in my abdomen, a warmth that seemed to pulse in rhythm with my heartbeat. I pressed a hand to my stomach, frowning. Are you all right? Lisa asked, noticing my discomfort. I'm fine, I assured her. Though I wasn't certain that was true, just nervous, I suppose. We finished packing well before the hour was up, my life's possessions fitting easily into a single canvas bag. I looked around my small cottage, the only home I'd known since my parents died, wondering if I would ever see it again. I'm scared, Lisa, I admitted, my voice barely above a whisper. She pulled me into a fierce hug. You're the strongest person I know, Eleanor. Whatever awaits you in the capital, you'll face it with the same courage you've shown here every day. I wished I shared her confidence. All too soon. A knock at the door signaled that my time was up. Commander Thorne stood outside, his expression softening slightly when he saw my single bag. "Is that all?" he asked. I nodded, clutching the strap tightly. "I travel light." He gestured toward an elegant black carriage waiting on the main path, its polished surface gleaming in the afternoon sun. The royal emblem, a silver wolf with amber eyes, was emblazoned on its door. "Your chariot awaits," he said, a hint of dry humor coloring his tone. I turned to Lisa for one last embrace, fighting back tears. "Take care of my herbs," I whispered. "And yourself." "I will," she promised. "And you'll send word when you can, as soon as I'm able," I agreed, though I had no idea if that would be possible. Commander Thorne cleared his throat discreetly. "We must depart now if we're to reach the capital before nightfall." With a final glance at my cottage, I followed him to the carriage. A small crowd had gathered to witness my departure, their expressions ranging from confusion to envy to outright suspicion. Elder Mira stood among them, her gaze fixed on me with an intensity that made my skin prickle. As I passed her, she reached out suddenly, grasping my wrist. "Remember who you are," she whispered so low only I could hear. "When the time comes, remember." Before I could ask what she meant, Commander Thorne ushered me into the carriage. The door closed with a solid thunk, and moments later we were in motion, the village rapidly receding behind us. I sat across from Commander Thorne, the small pot containing the silver seedling cradled carefully in my lap. For several miles, we traveled in silence, the rhythmic sway of the carriage doing little to calm my frayed nerves. "You must have questions," he said finally, breaking the silence. I looked up, studying his weathered face. "Dozens, but I doubt you'll answer them." A faint smile touched his lips. "Try me." I considered for a moment, then decided on the most pressing. "Why does the Alpha King want me in the capital? What does he want from me?" Commander Thorne's expression remained carefully neutral. "His Majesty's reasons are his own. But I can tell you this. You are not the first Omega he has shown interest in, but you are the first he has commanded be brought to him." The statement did nothing to ease my anxiety. "That's not comforting." "It wasn't meant to be," he replied frankly. "Merely informative." I glanced out the window at the passing landscape, watching as familiar forests gave way to rolling hills I'd never seen before. "Has he told you what I am? What he believes I am?" Something flickered in the commander's eyes. Surprise, perhaps, or weariness. "What makes you ask that?" "He told me I'm not what my pack believes me to be." I stroked one of the silver leaves of my strange plant, feeling that same jolt of energy, though weaker this time. "That I'm not cursed." Commander Thorne was silent for so long. I thought he wouldn't answer. Then he sighed, his shoulders relaxing slightly. "I've served King Raphael for 30 years. I've seen him face enemies that would make most alphas cower. I've never seen him intrigued the way he is by you." "That's not an answer," I pointed out. "No," he agreed. "It's a warning. Whatever game he's playing, whatever he sees in you, be careful. The king is not a man to be trifled with." The rest of our journey passed in relative silence, the landscape changing dramatically as we traveled. Forests gave way to vast plains which eventually yielded to the sprawling outskirts of the capital city Lunaris. I pressed my face to the window, erect despite my circumstances. I'd never ventured beyond our pack's territory before, and the capital was beyond anything I could have imagined. Stone buildings rose several stories high, their windows gleaming in the late afternoon sun. People of all designations, alphas, betas, omegas, moved through the streets with purpose, dressed in clothing far finer than anything in my village. And at the center of it all, perched atop the highest hill, stood the royal palace, a massive structure of pale stone and glittering glass, its spires reaching toward the sky like fingers grasping for the moon. "It's beautiful," I whispered, unable to contain my wonder. "And dangerous," Commander Thorne added softly. "Beauty often is." Our carriage passed through iron gates twice my height, guarded by soldiers in the same black uniforms as Commander Thorne. The palace grounds spread out before us. Immaculate gardens, fountains, and courtyards, all designed to impress and intimidate. It was working. We came to a stop before a side entrance, less grand than the main gates, but still more elaborate than any building in my village. Commander Thorne stepped out first, then extended a hand to help me descend. Welcome to Moonstone Palace, he said, his voice formal once more. Your new home. The words sent a chill through me. This wasn't a visit, then. This was something more permanent. A woman appeared in the doorway. Tall and elegant, with steel gray hair pulled into a severe bun and sharp eyes that missed nothing. Commander, she acknowledged with a nod. This is the Omega. Yes, Lady Rosalie. This is Elena Stone. She assessed me with a critical eye, taking in my simple clothes and the small pot I clutched protectively. His Majesty expected you sooner. The council required persuasion? Commander Thorne explained. Lady Rosal's lips thinned. I see. Well, come along then, girl. We must make you presentable before your audience with the king. Audience? I echoed, a fresh wave of anxiety washing over me. When? Tonight, she replied, already turning to lead the way inside. At the full moon ceremony, Commander Thorne placed a reassuring hand on my shoulder. Lady Rosalie is the king's Sanol. She'll see to your needs. And you? I asked, suddenly reluctant to part with the only person I knew in this strange place. Even if our acquaintance was brief. I have duties to attend to, but we'll meet again. He hesitated, then added in a lower voice, remember what I said. Eleanor. Be careful. With that cryptic warning, he left me in Lady Rosal's capable but intimidating hands. I followed her into the palace. The silver seedling clutched to my chest like a talisman, wondering what fate awaited me in this palace of stone and secrets, and what the Alpha King truly wanted from a supposedly barren Omega, who had never been anything special until now. Lady Rosalie led me through a labyrinth of corridors, each more opulent than the last. Marble floors gleamed beneath our feet, and tapestries depicting ancient wolf legends adorned the walls. Servants, mostly betas, bowed respectfully as we passed, their curious gazes following me when they thought I wouldn't notice. Your chambers, Lady Rosalie announced, stopping before an ornately carved wooden door. She pushed it open to reveal a suite that was easily 4 times the size of my entire cottage. I stepped inside, momentarily speechless. Sunlight streamed through tall windows, illuminating a sitting area with plush chairs and a writing desk. Through an archway, I glimpsed a bedroom with the largest bed I'd ever seen, draped in silvery blue silks that shimmered in the light. This can't be for me, I said, finding my voice at last. There must be some mistake. Lady Rosalie's expression remained impassive. His Majesty personally selected these rooms for you. They adjoined the royal gardens. She gestured toward glass doors that opened onto a private balcony. He thought you might appreciate the proximity to plant life. Her gaze dropped to the silver seedling in my arms. A flicker of something, curiosity perhaps, or weariness, crossing her features before she composed herself once more. A bath has been prepared for you, she continued briskly. Afterward, you will be dressed appropriately for the ceremony. The king expects all his guests to observe proper protocol. I'm not a guest, I said quietly. I'm a prisoner. For the first time, Lady Rosalie's stern countenance softened slightly. No, child. A prisoner would not be given chambers in the royal wing, nor would they be presented at the full moon ceremony as an honored attendee. Before I could respond, she clapped her hands and 3 young Omega women entered carrying various items, towels, bottles of scented oils, and a garment bag. These attendants will help you prepare, Lady Rosalie explained. I will return for you when it's time. With that, she swept from the room, leaving me alone with the 3 Omegas, who regarded me with poorly concealed curiosity. I'm Lily, said the tallest of the 3, a slender woman with warm brown skin and kind eyes. This is Sarah and Ivy. We're to help you get ready for tonight. I placed my seedling carefully on a table near the window where it could catch the remaining daylight, then turned to them with a sigh. I suppose I have little choice in the matter. Lily smiled sympathetically. The first day is always the hardest, but you'll adjust to palace life sooner than you think. The bath they led me to was more like a small pool set into the floor of an adjoining chamber and filled with steaming fragrant water. Despite my anxiety, I couldn't help but relax as I sank into its warmth, letting the attendants wash my hair with oils that smelled of jasmine and moonflower. As they worked, they chatted among themselves, occasionally directing questions to me about my village and my life there. I answered cautiously, still uncertain of my position and how much I should reveal. Is it true what they're saying? Sarah asked eventually, her voice dropping to a whisper. That you're the Omega from the prophecy? I froze. Elder Mira's feverish words echoing in my mind. What prophecy? The three exchanged glances. You don't know? Ivy asked, her eyes wide. The prophecy of the silver wolf. Before they could elaborate, the door to the bathing chamber opened and Lady Rosalie reappeared. That's quite enough gossip, she said sharply. Finish preparing her. The ceremony begins in an hour. The attendants fell silent immediately, focusing on their tasks with renewed diligence. They helped me from the bath and dried me with soft towels, then led me back to the bedroom where they presented me with the contents of the garment bag. I gasped despite myself. The gown was unlike anything I'd ever seen. A flowing creation of silver-blue silk that seemed to capture and reflect the light, adorned with tiny crystals that mimicked the night sky. It was beautiful, ethereal, and utterly intimidating. I can't wear this, I protested weakly. You can and you will, Lady Rosalie replied. The king selected it personally with the attendant's help. I slipped into the gown, marveling at how perfectly it fit, as though it had been made specifically for me. They arranged my light hair in an elegant twist, adorned with small silver pins shaped like crescent moons, and applied a subtle cosmetic to enhance my features. When they finally allowed me to look in the mirror, I barely recognized myself. The woman who stared back at me looked regal, mysterious. Nothing like the simple healer I'd always been. Now you look like what you truly are, Lady Rosalie murmured almost to herself. I turned to her sharply. And what is that exactly? She met my gaze steadily. That is for the king to reveal, not me. A knock at the door interrupted us. Commander Thorne had returned. Now dressed in formal attire, a black uniform adorned with silver insignia, a ceremonial sword at his hip. It's time, he announced, his expression grave. I glanced back at my silver seedling, which had grown even more in the short time since our arrival. Its stem was now nearly as thick as my wrist, and its leaves had a metallic sheen that caught the fading sunlight. Should I bring it? I asked, uncertain. Lady Rosalie shook her head. It will be safe here. The king has other revelations planned for tonight. I followed Commander Thorne through more corridors, each grander than the last, until we reached a set of massive double doors guarded by royal soldiers. Beyond them, I could hear the murmur of many voices, hundreds perhaps. The Grand Hall, Commander Thorne explained. The nobility of all 7 territories have gathered for the full moon ceremony. My heart began to race. Why am I here? What does the king want with me? Commander Thorne's expression softened slightly. Courage, Eleanor. All will be revealed soon. The doors swung open, and the noise from within washed over us like a wave. The grand hall was enormous, its ceiling soaring high above, supported by columns carved to resemble ancient trees. Hundreds of people filled the space, dressed in their finest attire, their conversations creating a buzzing undercurrent of sound that faltered momentarily as we entered. All eyes turned toward us, toward me, and I fought the urge to flee as Commander Thorne led me forward down a central aisle toward Addis at the far end of the hall. Upon it stood 3 thrones, the largest occupied by the man who had turned my life upside down in the span of 2 days. King Raphael Blackstone sat with the easy confidence of absolute power, his posture relaxed yet commanding. He wore formal attire, black with silver accents, a crown of platinum and obsidian resting on his dark hair. His amber eyes found mine immediately, and the corner of his mouth lifted in a slight smile that sent a shiver down my spine. As we approached the D's, the murmurs grew louder, and I caught fragments of conversation. The one from the prophecy, impossible, she's Barren. The Alpha King wouldn't choose. Commander Thorne halted at the foot of the D's and bowed deeply. I remained standing, unable to tear my gaze from the Alpha Kings. Your Majesty, Commander Thorne announced formally. I present Eleanor Stone as commanded. King Raphael rose from his throne, his movements fluid and predatory. The hall fell silent instantly. Eleanor, he said, his deep voice carrying effortlessly through the vast space. Welcome to Moonstone Palace. I managed a small curtsy, acutely aware of the hundreds of eyes upon me. Thank you for your hospitality, Your Majesty. A ripple of surprise ran through the assembled nobles at my direct address. The Alpha King, however, merely smiled more broadly. Come, he said, extending a hand toward me. Join me. Heart-pounding, I ascended the steps of the D's and placed my hand in his. His skin was warm, his grip gentle but firm, and that same electric current I'd felt at the hot springs coursed through me at his touch. He led me to stand beside his throne, facing the crowd. Noble lords and ladies of the 7 territories, he announced, his voice resonating with authority. Tonight's full moon ceremony holds special significance. For too long I have ruled alone since the passing of my queen. Tonight that changes. My breath caught in my throat as understanding dawned. Surely he couldn't mean I present to you Eleanor Stone. King Raphael continued, his hands still clasping mine. The Omega spoken of in the ancient prophecy. The silver wolf's mate. Chaos erupted in the hall. Voices rose in shock, disbelief, and outrage. A noble woman near the front, beautiful and regal in a crimson gown, stepped forward, her face contorted with fury. "This is madness, your majesty," she exclaimed. This common Omega cannot be the one from the prophecy. She's Barren. Everyone knows it." King Raphael's expression hardened, his grip on my hand tightening slightly. "Lady Victoria, your concerns are noted, but misplaced. Eleanor's true nature has been concealed. Even from herself until now." "Prove it," Lady Victoria challenged, her eyes flashing with defiance. "If she is truly the silver wolf's mate, let her demonstrate the power the prophecy speaks of." A tense silence fell over the hall. King Raphael turned to me, his amber eyes searching mine. "Do you trust me?" he asked quietly, for my ears alone. I hesitated. Did I trust him? This man who had uprooted my life, who spoke in riddles and half-truths, and yet something deep within me, something primal and instinctive, recognized him in a way I couldn't explain. "I don't know you," I whispered back. "But you will," he promised. Then, louder, addressing the assembly. "The proof you seek will be provided at moonrise. Until then, let us proceed with the ceremony." He guided me to sit in the smaller throne beside his own, a position of honor that caused another wave of murmurs to sweep through the crowd. As nobles approached the dais one by one to pay their respects, I leaned toward the king. "What is this prophecy they speak of?" I demanded under my breath. "And why do you believe I'm part of it?" His eyes never left the approaching nobles, but his voice was clear in my ear. "The prophecy of the Silver Wolf speaks of an Omega-believed Baron who will bear twins to the Alpha King. Twins who will unite the 7 territories in lasting peace and usher in a new age for our kind." My mind reeled. "But I am Barren. The healers confirmed it years ago." Now he did turn to me, his gaze intense. "The healers were wrong. Or perhaps they lied." Before I could question him further, the sun dipped below the horizon, and a hush fell over the assembly. Through the high windows of the grand hall, the light of the rising full moon began to stream in, bathing the D's in silver radiance. King Raphael stood, drawing me up with him. "The time has come," he announced. "Tonight, under the full moon's light, the truth will be revealed." He led me to the center of the D's where the moonlight was strongest and turned me to face him. "Do you remember the seed I gave you?" he asked. I nodded, thinking of the silver plant now growing in my chambers. "What is it?" "A moonflower," he replied. "A rare species that grows only in the presence of those with moon magic in their blood. It responds to you, Eleanor. Because you are not what your pact claimed. You are not cursed or barren. You are a lunar Omega, the last of an ancient line thought extinct." The words meant nothing to me, yet they resonated with something deep within, like the echo of a forgotten song. "I don't understand." "You will." He took both my hands in his. "The full moon reveals what is hidden. Let it show you who you truly are." As the moonlight touched our joined hands, a strange sensation began to build within me. A warmth that started in my core and spread outward, growing in intensity until my skin seemed to glow from within. Gasps arose from the assembled nobles as the light emanating from me grew brighter, silvery and ethereal. And with the light came knowledge, memories that weren't mine yet somehow were. Flowing into my consciousness like water breaking through a dam. I saw ancient forests, rituals performed under moonlight. Women with silver in their eyes commanding powers beyond ordinary comprehension. I saw the truth of what I was, what I had always been, though it had been hidden from me. "The silver wolf's mate," I whispered, the words feeling right on my tongue. King Raphael nodded, his amber eyes glowing with an inner light of their own. "My mate, my queen." The warmth in my abdomen intensified, and suddenly I knew with absolute certainty what else had been hidden from me. My hands flew to my stomach where 2 tiny lives had taken root. Their existence masked by ancient magic until this moment. "The twins," I gasped, tears filling my eyes. "They're real. They're here." A collective gasp echoed through the hall as my meaning became clear. Lady Victoria stepped back, her face pale with shock. Others fell to their knees, overcome by the significance of what they were witnessing. King Raphael. No, Raphael, my mate, placed his hand over mine where it rested on my abdomen. His touch gentle and reverent. The prophecy fulfills itself, he said, his voice thick with emotion. The rejected Omega, cursed as Barren, carries the Alpha King's twins. How? I asked, still struggling to comprehend the magnitude of what was happening. How is this possible? The lunar Omegas were hunted nearly to extinction centuries ago, Raphael explained. His voice low. Their power, the ability to command moon magic, to heal, to see beyond ordinary sight, was feared by those who didn't understand it. The survivors went into hiding, suppressing their abilities, concealing their true nature, even from their own children. Understanding dawned, my mother's pendant, I whispered, touching the silver moon at my throat. Her words about light returning after darkness. Raphael nodded. She knew what you were, what you would become. She left you that talisman to protect you until the time was right. And the seed, the moonflower, a test, he admitted. Only a lunar Omega could make it grow. When I first saw you at the ritual, I sensed what you were. Your power called to mine across the clearing, but I needed to be certain. I thought of Elder Mira's fevered dreams, her cryptic words. She knew, didn't she? Elder Mira, she suspected. Raphael confirmed. There are still those among the old packs who remember the ancient ways, who recognize the signs when your powers began to manifest, even in small ways. Your healing abilities, your intuition. These were glimpses of your true nature breaking through. The moonlight streaming through the windows seemed to intensify. And with it, the glow emanating from my skin. The twins within me, impossibly miraculously real, pulsed with their own small energies, already connected to the moon magic flowing through my veins. What happens now? I asked, overwhelmed by the weight of prophecy and destiny. Raphael's expression softened, and for the first time since I'd met him, I saw vulnerability in his amber eyes. That depends on you, Eleanor. The prophecy has been set in motion, but prophecies don't dictate every step of the journey. I would have you as my queen, my mate, the mother of my children, but only if you choose it freely. I studied his face, seeing beyond the Alpha King to the man beneath. A man who had lived with the burden of prophecy far longer than I had, who had searched for me, not just because destiny demanded it, but because something in him recognized something in me. And if I choose to return to my village, I asked, needing to know my options were truly my own. A shadow crossed his face, but he nodded. Then you would return with my protection and provision for you and the children. I would not force you to stay, Eleanor. That is not the mate bond one seek. His honesty touched something within me, the part that had always felt out of place, that had endured rejection and isolation. With a quiet dignity that I now recognized as the inheritance of my lunar ancestors, I thought of my small cottage, my life as a healer on the fringes of a pack that had never truly accepted me. I thought of the silver seedling in my chambers, growing stronger by the hour, just as the lives within me grew. And I thought of this man before me, powerful and commanding, yet willing to offer me a choice when he could have simply claimed what prophecy declared was his. The moon reached its zenith, bathing us both in its full radiance. In that perfect silver light, I made my decision. I stepped closer to Raphael, our joined hands still resting over the miracle of our unborn children. I choose to stay, I said softly. Not because of prophecy or destiny, but because something in me recognizes something in you. Because the rejected Omega in me sees the lonely Alpha in you. Relief and joy flooded his features. He leaned forward, pressing his forehead against mine in an intimate gesture of connection. My queen, he whispered. My mate. In that moment, with the full moon as our witness, and hundreds of nobles looking on in awe, the rejected Omega, once cursed as Barren, but now revealed as a lunar queen, sealed her choice with a kiss that promised a future neither of us could have imagined 2 days before. And within me, the Alpha King's twins, harbingers of peace and unity for the 7 territories, grew stronger, nurtured by the moon magic that flowed through their mother's veins, protected by the fierce love of their father, destined to bridge worlds that had long been separated by fear and misunderstanding. I was no longer Ellen Stone, the Barren Omega. I was Eleanor Blackstone, the Silver Wolf's mate, the Lunar Queen, mother of the future, and for the first time in my life, I was exactly where I belonged.